gonna do, this you can do in your sketchbook, or you should do in your sketchbook. You're gonna take a piece of paper. You can do this directly in your sketchbook and rip it out later. You're gonna take a piece of paper, you're gonna use, lengthwise is going to be like the width of your cup. So we're determining our height of our cup, which is minimum 4 inches. It could be taller than 4 inches, it could be 6 inches. It'd be kind of hard to clean, but it could be as tall as you want. It could be as tall as the paper. Again, difficult to clean, but if that floats your boat, that's on you. So best way to measure, whatever you do, just be consistent. So if you start from this side, or you start from the 0, whatever you do, just stay consistent. I'm gonna start from the 0, and I'm going to go to 4.5. Because the 4 I did last time was a little short in my opinion. But if you do 4, you'll get a decent sized cup, no worries. But I'm doing 4.5, and I have 3 points. I'm going to, line this up, making sure that my ruler is parallel to the paper, and I'm going to line this up. Look at that. Look how bad that was. This tells me that none of these were even, right? So this one's a little bit higher, this one's a little bit higher, and this one's spot on, even though that this is. I'm going to take the spot on one because I know that this is parallel. So this is going to be a nice perpendicular line that's now parallel to this one. And then I can cut. So once I draw that line, your template is going to inform what your clay piece looks like. So if your template is like all janky and it has some rough edges, aka you don't know how to cook that well, it's going to look like you don't know how to cut that well when you make your slab. So take your time.
So which one is like so the height is like the width of it?
The height is the 4.5, 5 inches that you decide. I'm not done, so as I completely explain, you'll be able to get a full, I hope, picture of what that means. And so, once you cut this, you always want to test out your template before you make it. So you always want to test out your template before you make it. This is how my template would look, it being at full, like the full length of the paper. Now this becomes my width. To me, I don't know, it's a little bit wide. I don't want it to be that wide. So I am going to make it a little bit more narrow. And then I am going to draw a line so I know where to cut. This is now my new template. I'm going to write my name on this. I'm not going to lie, this is a little crooked. So I'm going to use my previous template from my other class. So I have all these different types of templates, some wider, some shorter than the others. Put that to the side. Now that I have my template, I want my slab of clay to kind of mimic what my template looks like. And so I do, and I have that. Put my pieces to the side. Now I'm going to roll out my slab of clay, making sure that I'm using 1/4 inch sticks. You don't need anything thicker than 1/4 inch. You'll just be wasting your time in clay. This clay is pretty soft. So I'm going to make a pass. And I'm going to flip it. Notice I'm not flipping and rotating. I'm just flipping it because I want this to get really long. I know by default it's going to get a little bit wider than what I need. So make sure you're pressing down really hard and you're distributing that clay, because if you have an uneven slab, what are you going to have? Uneven walls and uneven drying experience. And that's just going to turn into cracks. So now I have this nice piece, beautiful. I could put my sticks away. Now I have this. So ideally, you want your template to fit and some extra. Anybody can guess why? Take another guess. Close. For the base, yes, for the base. Did you say that and I didn't hear you? I'm sorry, too soft spoken. My bad. So you're gonna need that for your base. So you want to make sure that you have enough for you to do your base. And the only way to ensure that is to have more than enough. This is gonna be too small for my base, I can just tell. So anything I'm not gonna use immediately, put away. The clay is really soft. It does take a lot of effort to make the clay soft again. So please, please, please wrap it up. All right, so at this point, I need a wear board, which I have here. I'm gonna lift this up. Yes, I know I'm lifting up my slab, but what do you think I'm gonna do to just kind of remind it where it should be? I'm gonna roll it again, and I have these pony rollers, which are on the opposite side of the, or next to the rolling pins. And I'm still gonna use my sticks, so I have the same thickness. But I'm just gonna go over this. Actually, not with the pony roller, because it's a little bit bigger than the width, and I'm just gonna go over this a little bit, just to remind it that it stays flat. Then, I'm gonna prep my slab, right? So I'm gonna prep my slab. I want these two pieces to overlap, but I don't want there to be a chunky piece here where I have two pieces of clay. What do you think I can do to kind of remedy that? You probably don't know, so I'm gonna show you. So you're gonna use one of these. These are called bevels. These are going to be on the pegboard if they're not here. Chances are they're going to be on a pegboard just so they're out of the way. Whatever side you use, just be consistent. If you use this side, consistently use this side on every side. If you use this side, consistently use this side on every side. Whatever you do, just be consistent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut and bevel the sides so when I can put them, or these two ends that get put together so they are flat. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. So essentially, this seam right here wasn't overlapped. It was just kind of a flat seam. And that way you can see the thickness doesn't change. It stays pretty even to that quarter inch. So this goes right on the edge. Right here, goes right on the edge. Put your thumb on the opposite side, and then you're just cutting that. Remember, I'm not going to do this side and then swap it and do the other side. Why not?
Be a different angle.
Exactly. They're two different angles, so that's why I say just be consistent whenever which side you use to ensure that it fits. You also want to be careful where you're not indenting your slab, because this is a slab project. It's really going to test how demure you can be, like how gentle you can be with things. So really thinking about feathers and how that looks like. And so I'm going to flip it over to do the other side. Why am I doing the other side and not the same side? Exactly. So please, please, please make sure you flip. And when you flip, do not let the clay just hang. What's happening if you have the clay hanging and you're not supporting it? It's stretching, so you're now losing its shape, and now you're changing the shape, and it's never going to be. You might have an uneven lip. It might not look the way it needs to be because now you're stretching the clay. So be very careful when you're lifting it up. Then you're going to do the same thing on this side. Then you're going to use your serrated rib. That's my favorite. I'm getting a headache. I'm going to take some vitamin C shots. So I'm going to, there's slip, and there will be slip at all the tables. It scores for you, yeah. I like these. I know the little ones with the needle tools, they seem fun, but I like these especially for the bigger projects because you're able to score a huge section versus those little scoring tools are very tedious. And so I can really go a little bit faster and then score. So once you put slip on, you definitely want to score it back because you lose all those lines that are very important. So at this point, I am cleaning my hands because I don't want any slip to go anywhere else. And I'm already mangling my piece a little bit, so let's hope that it fares well. So in theory, it should stand on itself. And so what you're going to see is me connecting it on the seam. flipping it over. You have to be very gentle. What you don't want to do, and I see people do this all the time, and then I like somewhat die inside, is people laying their cup flat on the side and putting it together. Oh my God, what is going to happen when you do that? It's just, huh? It's just going to be flattened. So what almost always happens is because you're adding pressure on the sides, when you try to remedy it, they crack right on the sides, and you don't have a cup anymore. So at this point, I'm using my serrated rib to really go in there very lightly and patch that nicely up. Going in with my smooth rib. Notice how I'm doing a lot of scraping and cleaning. This day went by fast. But there's only so much you can do at this stage. Remember, wet work, you could do a certain amount. Then when it gets leather hard, you can really do some more. And then, yeah, you're pretty much done, right? And so I really want to change the shape of this and get this shape to how I would ultimately want it. So you can use a little bit of finger, going like this. You can kind of see it rounding out. So at this point, I'm going to score the entire base of this because I have no clue where this is going to sit. And I don't know about you, but I don't have time to cut out a circle and then see where it actually fits on the circle. I'd rather put it on, and then we could clean up those edges later. So I'm going to add some slab. It's like eating Bob Ross going on. You know how he died? So it's the equivalent as in here is clapping your hands and inhaling the dust. He died because he was always wiping his pants with terpenoid, which is very hazardous stuff. And he got leukemia. It absorbs through your skin, which is your largest organ. So be careful. It could be cool, but very dangerous. So I'm scoring this really well. I'm going to score the bottom of this so I can attach it. And be careful. Go ahead.
Does it matter which side you use for the base?
I already had committed because I already had scored this side, so I want to make sure the side that is the least prettiest in theory. But when I had started this, the side that was closest to me, I already deemed that that was going to be the side that goes down. But if your slab is good, you shouldn't matter. Or if your template, I should say, was good, it shouldn't matter what side it's on. A little bit of order. So at this point, I'm scoring. So this is really hard because I can't just squish this down to attach it, right? I'm gonna really have to use my hands and cup and kind of shimmy it down. So now I'm trying to adjust where this goes, making sure this bottom gets skirted out as it needs to. And I'm getting that nice and round. I could also use a paintbrush if I don't want to use my finger, just to get that circle nice and round. Use my finger in here to get that nice and round. Then I am going to use my hand and then cup on the side to kind of press downward so I can get some oozing on the side so I can get a good connection. Just enough so you can see some movement. We're not trying to squish this to oblivion. This might help when you're doing this part using a banding wheel just to spin it. Now at this point, what do you think I'm going to do? Huh? I didn't hear you. Come on, I can't hear you. I cannot hear you, Eliza. Cut. Yes, you're going to cut.
Oh, I didn't know you were asking me.
No, I just whoever, but you were the only one talking and then I couldn't hear you.
Alex was talking.
Well, I couldn't hear her either. She just was like pushing you in front of the bus and was like, here, you say it. So I'm going to cut, take my time. Cutting this. What am I doing with the excess clay? Please, if you love yourself, you love me. Please, even if you hate me, just please put the clay back away.
I know won't be putting her clay back.
Now, at this point in time, I'm going to score up this so it can all match. Get that nice and smooth, looking good. Look at the inside. What am I going to do with the inside of this cup? It looks kind of gross. I don't think anybody can eat out of that. It's already scored, so what do you think I'm gonna do? How? It's kind of hard to get a metal paintbrush. Yes, sir. So again, these tools are going to act in many different ways. Sometimes a tool that makes sense to be used as something else is the perfect tool for you to do whatever. There's no real rules on what the tools do as long as they can accommodate you and what you need. So again, once this gets leather hard, there's a lot more refining we can do. So please, it's almost like very lightly making movements to ensure. Beautiful. So now, I like personally, you can find these on the pegboards. I personally like the clear brushes with the white tips because they're stiff enough where you can apply the lightest amount of pressure and it still smooths out what you need to without applying too much pressure and damaging your piece. And so I would like it to have a little bit of water, but if your clay is soft enough, you can kind of see in here. You're not pressing really hard. So you're like painting the inside. Making sure you're looking at the seams. If you see any holes or divots in the seam, add a little slip in there and like fill up that hole. You can also drop a piece of clay and then use one of your wooden tools or the back of something to get that in. But you want the inside of that to be really smooth because any imperfections will make your piece unusable. And so for the end of tomorrow's class, you should have something like this. And then I'm going to show you how to add your foot. So on Thursday's class, so I did that last period, so maybe 30 minutes ago, and it's already close to leather hard. So depending on, I don't think we have long blocks tomorrow, so it doesn't really matter. I'm cleaning up the bottom, making sure that I'm being careful. Then I'm going to score. This is where I'm going to have my foot. Make sure that you score nice and deep. And then you put your slip on and then you go ahead and score those lines again. Sometimes you'll see me like to just put slip on before I even score anything and then score over the slip. As long as the basic concept is met. Now at this point, I'm going to roll a coil for my foot. Make sure your coil when you're rolling your coil for your foot can be a little bit on the stiffer side of the clay, as long as it's not cracking, and sometimes that's a little bit better because then it allows you to kind of turn it over on its foot and for you to continue working on it without worrying about keeping it upside down while the foot kind of hardens. This clay is kind of soft, but I got it. As long as you are consistent and you have a nice consistent coil, you'll have a nice consistent foot. And so, score this. I tell people all the time, you must be walking your coil on. You should not just be placing it all in its shape. Can anybody tell me why? It always changes shape because you're pressing it on and so it's now conforming. And your clay is still malleable, so it's kind of changing its shape.
So you have to add it around the edge?
No, you could go a little bit in.
Does it matter the thickness?
It shouldn't be thicker than your pinky.
Can you make it like thin?
Yeah, but you don't want it too thin where it doesn't like
Hold it. Yeah.
it doesn't hold it, or as soon as a little bit of pressure it flattens it out. So you might have to keep it upside down long enough in order for it to become leather hard. And at this point, I'm going to use another wear board because that's not even. Just to even this, to ensure that it's even. Then I could kind of clean up this edge and make it a little bit more seamless. If you want yours to be a little bit more inwards, you can. So it's like almost like a floating foot. That's entirely up to you. That means a little bit more work as far as smoothing and cleaning, but that's entirely up to you. So remember, in this stage and in many stages, you're doing quick kind of adjustments, and then as clay stiffens up and gets harder, again, you can go back and revisit. But you gotta remember that you're revisiting in each stage. So this clay is so wet, I feel like whatever I do kind of changes it a little bit. And so what I'm going to do is just clean up. Same thing you did for the inside of that cup. I'm trying not to apply a lot of pressure, especially if this is still soft, because then it's going to concave the inside of my cup and kind of stress that a little bit. So if you're cleaning out, I like to use a clean rib in like scooping motion to scrape off any of the pieces that might be extra. Slab cups are hard in the sense that if you want the walls to be straight and even, there's a lot of light touching you're doing and precise movements. So really knowing where you want to put things and how they're going to be put together before you lift up the clay. So you see how I was able to lift this up and just kind of put it together. You in your head need to have a game plan, or it's going to crumble in your hand and then you're not going to have a usable slab. So take your time. So I have my foot, right? It's not totally clean, but it's clean enough for me to continue because the clay is just so wet. If I try to clean it more, I'm just going to end up denting it. Now to make my handle. So it's important for your handle to be on the thicker side. You don't want it to be too thin because there's nothing worse than holding a cup and then the handle like kind of just snaps off. That's happened to me. Or just seeing a cup and holding your breath because you're like, if I put water in this, the handle's just going to fall off. If you ever go to a craft fair, if you've ever been to the Big E, you go to ceramic sections, people are always looking at pieces. The first thing they're going to do is hold it, see how comfortable it is. Second thing they're going to do is look at your foot. See if you have nice clean feet, like well manicured feet, because if you don't have clean feet, you're scratching someone's nice granite countertops or wooden table, and your parents will probably be mad at me, and I don't want that. So make sure your feet are clean, meaning when you're moving stuff around too, be aware of the space and your board, that you're not just putting your nice wet piece on a whole bunch of crumbs, because that's all going to stick to your bottom piece. So I like to start with a somewhat chunkier handle, starting with a coil, and I'm kind of flattening it out just with my hand, the side of my hand. But nothing worse, that's really chunky looking, right? What I'm going to do is soften that. I need this to be chunky because I need it to actually be able to support the fluid that you're going to put in there, the roughness if you're putting it in the dishwasher, I need it to be able to hang. And so I also want it to look good too. So I'm just kind of tapering this. So you get the illusion that it's thinner, but it's still nice and strong and thick. And I'm going to cut this part off. Then I have a whole bunch on the peg wall. There's a whole bunch of foam pieces for you to mold your handle around. I'm not going to make you decide what shape. There's plenty to choose from. Your slab or your coil needs to be longer than this. If it's just meeting that, it's not going to be comfortable enough to hold. There's not going to be enough room. And so I have these pony rollers, which are right next to the big rolling thingies from the jiggers. I like to kind of roll it over so it can kind of take up the shape. Now at this point, it's very important that you cut parallel to here. This will be where your cup meets the handle. So this is the edge of your cup. So you want to cut right on that line so you have a nice attachment. Then I'm just going to use this as a guide so I can know where to score. What I don't want you doing is I don't want you sipping and scoring this together like this in the unit. Why wouldn't I want you to do that? Yes, but even more importantly, it's going to be really hard to take out, but it's going to be hard to take out because the clay is going to start shrinking. This foam piece doesn't shrink at all. The clay is going to shrink. This foam piece doesn't shrink. So if your clay is drying around this, it's going to pop off. So it's important to remove this once you have it able to kind of hold its shape or remove it pretty quickly. So you never want to leave this on your shelf with this inside, because chances are it's going to pop off. And so I've kind of marked where my score lines are going to be. And so I'm going to paint those. Most of your cleanup is going to happen after this stage, where you can really clean up and make it look nice and clean, but you're going to be cleaning up in bursts along the way. And so at this point, if this is like really thin, if your coil is super thin and it looks like a piece of paper close to it, I wouldn't even try to attach it, because what you're going to find is that it's going to come apart or it's going to start cracking because of the weight of it. And so just, if you are unsure, always rule on the side of, it should be as thick or if not thicker than the thickness of your pot, this part that you're attaching. And so I'm going to get some nice oozing here, nice oozing there. Now I'm going to take a coil and I'm just going to place around it. And because there's score lines and my clay is really soft, I don't really necessarily need a slipping score around it. Some people like the aesthetics of having the coil around me, not so much. I don't like it. That's me personally, but if you were to do it, and not to say that I wouldn't like it on something you do, but I just don't like it for my work. And so, although I know and understand this is needed, I'm going to smooth this out. And so when you're working on this, you want to be very, very careful, very demure, very mindful when you're picking it up. And so I'm just using the ends of this to kind of smooth that into the base. But definitely add your coil for your handle. That's going to make it extra secure. Then I'm going to blend it into the handle. Do the same thing up top. So at this rate, you have this cup. And I'm going to do this off lesson and finish this up for my next class, so I can use this as a demo. And so after you clean up and you have a nice finished smooth cup, mine is not smooth, but in theory it is for this lesson, right? So you're ignoring all that. Now it's time for underglaze. Now when you're underglazing, this is just for this project where we're going to be putting underglaze before we fire it. And this process is called Sgraffito. And essentially the act of painting clay and then removing that color to expose the underneath to create a pattern. And Sgraffito, some people will do like real intricate drawings, right? Some people like me just do nice cool patterns and abstract. I'm not looking for anything special. If you want to do special, it's all up to you. You can do something as simple as just doing it on one part and just doing your initials, or just doing a butterfly or something. I just want you to try Sgraffito so you have an understanding of how it's used and how it works, because it's something that has to be done before it goes into the kiln. I have people ask me all the time, oh, can I Sgraffito this? And it's like, well, it's already been fired. You can't do it outside of greenware. So that's the only time you're going to be painting anything before it gets into the kiln if you want to Sgraffito. And I'm going to show you how you go ahead and do that. So each of these, on this side closest to me, there's warm colors. On the other side, there's cool colors. And in theory, there is a test tile for each of them. Some don't. How you read them, there's Velvet Underglaze, V361. There's LUG 123. There's G. They all kind of start with kind of a number code. And so you'll see either at the bottom here or on the back what color is on here. So it's always a good idea to look at the test tile to see what color you want before you start to paint. We're not going to be painting until Thursday, so there's some time to work on that, but they're not the same colors. So you look at this, yes, this is black, but it's not going to be the same hue of black. Some of these look purple and are actually blues. So you never want to just pick a bottle and say, oh, this is the color I'm going to make, because it's probably not going to look like what you think it's going to look like. So definitely look at the test tile. And so once, I love this. Jet black is one of my favorite blacks, and this was jet black too, so I just like use it. This is the color of the clay with no glaze on it. I mean, with no underglaze. This is the clay that we've been using. This is the color that's going to be fired. if you do not paint it. This is the color that's going to be fired once you carve away the under or the sgraffito or the paint as well. So consider that color in your scheme of things. If you don't like this color at all, then you probably want to paint your entire cup and do like the smallest section of sgraffito or whatever the case may be. I've had people do layers of sgraffitos because they went to investigate all the things they could do. They showed me what they wanted to do and I gave them the tools. So if you want to go down the rabbit hole of sgraffito, by all means. Can't stress this enough because at least one person in every class, every semester does this. They'll take off the shelf, then they start shaking and then pops off and they're slip everywhere. And guess what I do? I walk away, I give them towels, and I say clean it up before class is over. Because I tell people all the time, check to see if these covers are on before you start shaking. But these must be shaken before you get used because they settle. And then you're just going to have a really inconsistent watery finish. So shaking that really well. I also say, anything on this pegboard, assume it's dirty. Just assume it's dirty. Like this, full of clay. Why? I don't know. But it is. Somebody put it back there. So what am I going to do? I'm not going to use it. But I'm going to take one that's clean and still clean it to make sure. Especially when we're painting, you don't want clay to get into your underglaze. Those are two different beasts. And they're not compatible and will ruin your surface design. So be very careful with that. I am going to do my second layer. So you should, in theory, do 3 layers of paint. And if you wanted to paint your whole cup and be the most efficient, I can't stress enough, paint your inside, flip it over. The only thing that's not going to get painted is the lip. Flip it over and then you can paint the whole outside knowing that you come to class, rinse and repeat. Versus if you do the outside, like how can you flip it over to do the bottom? You can't because it's going to be wet. So make sure you are going to paint the bottoms of these. You're going to paint the bottom of these with underglaze, because underglaze is not glaze. It's something that goes under glaze to give you the color that you need. So it's more similar to clay than it is to glaze. So you can paint the entirety of your piece, and you should, because if you don't paint the entirety of the piece, what ends up happening is that it gets really hard. The glaze is literally the same color as the clay, and it's so hard to decipher where to wipe off the glaze. So just paint your feet on your bottom. And so I'm just going to show you, because I'm not painting the whole outside. As you can see, I have like this drip thing going, so I don't have to paint the bottom of my piece because I want a similar aesthetic to this, essentially. But if you wanted the inside to be pink and the outside to be blue, do your inside first, flip it over so you can do your outside and get everything in one go. So what I'm doing is tapping ever so lightly the underglaze. I'm not scrubbing this in. Why am I not scrubbing this in? I'm sorry?
You don't need to?
Yeah, I don't need to, but why don't I need to scrub it in? What would happen if I start just pressing really hard into this clay with something wet?
Oh,
It will start, like, you'll start messing up, like, so essentially if I start doing this, I'm not going to do it, but if I start scrubbing this, which some people often do and I don't understand why, you're literally watering down this clay and you're mixing clay in with underglaze, which is a big no-no. You want to just be adding underglaze to your clay. You do not want to be scrubbing on, because then what's going to happen is clay is going to be scraped up and come into here, and it's going to change the entire chemistry of your underglaze. Somebody's going to paint their piece who's been painting this forever and then say, why is this not sticking to the clay? Why is this has this weird texture? Chances are it was contaminated to some degree. And so that is my second. It's my second, what do you call it, coat. Don't do any more than it can absorb. So you can see that it looks a little bit like, it doesn't look shiny right here. Right here it doesn't look shiny like a matte black. Everywhere else where it's really wet, it's gonna be matte black. I mean, it's gonna be shiny. So what I'm not gonna do is I'm not gonna try to rush, oh, I need 3 coats, paint on top of the wet. Why not?
To make it chunky.
Huh?
Chunky.
It's gonna make it chunky, but also it's gonna make it streaky. Because it's not dry, what you're doing is moving away the underglaze instead of adding more on. So it's really important for you to allow this to dry in between, not a rush. That's why we have other things to do. If some of you didn't finish your pot head and taking your photos while this is drying and sitting, you can go ahead and do that. Then I'm gonna add my final layer for my outside, and then in theory I would just carve. So that is the end of my demo. That was so long.